All right, folks, this is the last section of carbohydrates, which is fiber and probiotics. Now, first of all, fiber has two different categories. One is dietary, and dietary means that it is plant-based. It is the natural original product of food that we consume. For example, the fiber that exists inside of a carrot is dietary fiber because we eat the carrot as a part of our diet. That is distinguished from functional fiber, which is fiber that's been extracted from other foods, processed in a warehouse, in a factory, in a laboratory, manufactured to then be added to other foods. So for example, when we were talking about the different types of breads, if you notice the label on the left, the multi-grain says honey fiber, and it has 4 grams of fiber. Yet if you go to the ingredients, you'll notice that it's made with enriched wheat flour, which is code word for white flour. No naturally occurring fiber is left hardly. So where in the world did all the fiber come from? Well, if you read down another line or two, you'll see the word cellulose. And if you recall, cellulose is a plant fiber, is a complex carbohydrate, right? Because fiber is a complex carbohydrate. But the cellulose being added to the bread, folks, is a functional fiber. Another term to refer to as functional fiber, I like to call it frankenfiber or fake fiber because it's not naturally occurring. It's something we've added. We can create functional fiber out of any plant product. In fact, during the economic recession in Greece, when there was a shortage of dietary choices, especially flours for breads, a lot of bakers were using sawdust because it is what? Cellulose from a tree. They were adding sawdust to their bread so that their breads were heavier, denser, and were more filling for people when they were eating them. Kind of a bummer, huh? Because you're not getting any nutritional value in terms of vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates that provide glucose, or protein when you're eating functional fiber. It simply is going to go into your gut and expand. Now, there has been fads over the years regarding fiber with a recognition of how vital fiber is as a part of human health, not only for nutrient delivery, but also for expansion of our intestinal lumen, which promotes peristalsis, muscular contractions inside our intestinal tract. Hey folks, muscles don't need to be just in our arms, legs, back, core, and glutes. We actually have muscles in our whole digestive tract that keep food moving along from going down our esophagus, through our stomach, and down our intestines. So to keep those healthy, especially in the intestinal zone, when we consume plenty of fiber in our diet from naturally occurring, ready, dietary foods, then we provide actually a great opportunity for our intestinal muscles to exert themselves, to exercise, to reinforce their strength. When the National Academies were reviewing dietary research, what they found is that actually there is more benefit to human health if we're consuming fiber that is dietary, meaning naturally occurring in the food, versus functional fiber that's been added. Now, I'm not saying functional fiber is bad. It does have, it serves a purpose as a supplement to aid people when they're constipated. But the reality is if we have dietary fiber in our diet every day, we're less likely to become constipated. All right, so what is the importance of fiber in our diet? Well, first of all, fiber plays the role of supporting our body weight. How in the world does it do that? Because when we eat foods rich in dietary fiber, now this is going to be your whole fruits, whole vegetables, whole grains, then this actually promotes satiety because the fiber does what? It expands. And as it expands in contact with fluid, it enlarges the spaces in our intestinal tract, putting pressure on our stomach and making us feel fuller. When that happens, we are less likely to eat more frequently. So we'll eat less frequently and therefore take in less calories. So fiber is actually a very important key component in managing our weight and caloric intake. But mind you, again, it needs to be dietary fiber coming from whole foods. Fiber is also really important because when it does expand, it slows down the release of sugar from our food products like fruits. And it slowly moves these products along through our intestinal tract. So as part of reducing the likelihood of high blood sugar, like from drinking fruit juice, if we opt to eat the whole fruit, then that actually releases the sugar slowly into our bloodstream, not escalating those numbers. Fiber is also incredibly important because it is the dietary choice of our intestinal bacteria. It feeds the bacteria, and that's vital because they are a part of our defense system and our health. Fourthly, how does fiber support us? Well, by helping defeat things like constipation. And if we're not constipated, then we're not putting pressure, straining to eliminate stools from our intestinal tract, which means it helps prevent hemorrhoids. When we have fiber and foods expand in our gut and move along successfully versus being slow and getting stuck, then we reduce the likelihood of appendicitis or creating little pouches in the sides of our intestinal tract called diverticulitis. Now, when we talk about our dietary fibers, there are two that we typically are going to access, and of these two, the soluble fiber ones are the ones that are typically extracted and used in supplements, but not to say they don't do the same with insoluble fiber. For soluble fiber, there are 4 different types. The first one is really the superstar, and that's beta-glucan, which is found in foods like oatmeal, your oats. Why is beta-glucan so darn exciting? Because it actually plays a very powerful role in human health. And this has to do, and we'll take a look in a moment on the slide, but it has to do with our blood cholesterol and supporting human health. Another type of soluble fiber is pectin, found in things like the skin of apples. Hey, so think of it this way, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Because when we have pectin, another soluble fiber in our diet, it aids the health and well-being of our intestinal tract. And folks, when you're healthy on the inside, you are healthy all the way through to the outside. Other sources of dietary fiber can come from natural gums. This is going to be things like your seeds and seaweed. And then fourthly, inulin. Inulin is a fiber that is found in different foods. It's found in wheat, onion, chicory, pears, for example. The inulin, when they were going through a phase for a while of adding that functional fiber or frankenfiber to different foods that really had no business having fiber, like yogurt, awkward. They were oftentimes using inulin because it worked very well in a more fluid-based environment. Soluble fiber is really important for motility in the intestinal tract because it slows motility down. So soluble fiber is the one that helps promote satiety, keeping us fuller longer, reducing the likelihood of eating more food, more calories. So soluble fiber has that powerful role in weight management. Soluble fiber expands in our intestinal tract, and that's what creates the greater bulk and volume to slow down the motility of the foods that are passing through us. Soluble fiber is the dietary food choice of our intestinal bacteria. It is considered a prebiotic because it provides food to the bacteria. It can be fermented. So, what would be a great example? Well, cruciferous vegetables. When we overconsume broccoli or cauliflower or cabbage and we're not used to eating them, then our bacteria is going to have a party. Woo! Party, party. Because they really enjoy these foods and they're going to eat a lot of them. But whenever your bacteria has a party, it produces gas, methane gas. That's one of its byproducts when it's a little overzealous. So that fermentation process will transfer through the body. Hey, of the pictures that I have on the screen here, if you notice the lovely little roots with the buds on the ends of them, that's actually Belgian endive and radicchio. And then the watery picture on the right is carrageenan, a seaweed that's actually used oftentimes in things like our toothpaste or in low-fat ice creams to give it more structure. All right, so let's talk about the relevance and importance of things like beta-glucan. When we consume a bowl of oatmeal and it passes through our stomach to our intestinal tract, it comes in contact with fluid and the beta-glucan starts to expand. Now, for whatever reason, it has a little extra special oomph to it because when it expands in your intestinal tract, the bile that's been sequestered, sent to your intestinal tract from your liver to attach to any fats to help your body absorb those fats, instead ends up attaching to the beta-glucan. And then as the beta-glucan moves down your intestinal tract and exits your body, it takes the bile with it. Well, shoot. Your body needs bile to be able to absorb fat. Like what if you had, let's say, chopped up almonds or pecans in your oatmeal? For your body to be able to access those healthy fats, it needed bile. So now you've lost the fats because you've lost the bile with the excess leftover pieces of oatmeal that your body's discharging. So it carries the bile out. When it carries the bile out, your liver gets a message saying, hey, we need to make more bile. Send more bile up to the gallbladder because we just lost it with that darn oatmeal. Well, how does the liver make more bile? It dispatches HDL, otherwise known as the good cholesterol, out into your bloodstream to pick up any excess cholesterol. When it locates that cholesterol, it'll carry it back to the liver, and the liver will then use it as some of the building material to make new bile. And then that bile will be redirected to your gallbladder, and it will be stored there until your next dietary intake that has fat in it. Now, this is a really positive experience, folks. It's because we want to, like the circle of life, we want to keep things rotating through our body, keep it fresh, keep it moving. We want to actually reduce the dietary cholesterol or the cholesterol parts in our bloodstream so that we have an opportunity to maintain balance, homeostasis in our blood, to not have too much fats floating around. Why? Because LDL, known as the bad cholesterol, and hey folks, it's not bad, it's just doing its job. Every time we eat a lot of fat in our diet, saturated fat, dietary cholesterol, your body packages up into little balls called LDL, low density lipoprotein, and it dispatches those out into your bloodstream. Now, what they're doing is delivering nutrients to your body, and that's all good. But if you overconsume fat in your diet, then you overproduce LDL. And that overproduction, folks, does start to set in motion the genesis of heart disease. So eating foods rich in beta-glucan, like oatmeal, really has an indirect but yet very powerful mechanism in supporting heart health. Pretty darn cool, huh? All right. Our second type of fiber, insoluble fiber, is different from soluble fiber because it does not expand in water like soluble fiber. It retains its shape. It's less attracted to our intestinal bacteria. The hemicellulose and cellulose is hard or near impossible for them to break down, so they're not very attracted to consuming those. Hemicellulose does consist of, it's part of the plant cell wall and consists of polysaccharides that are a little simpler in branching in comparison to the cellulose or the lignans. So your bacteria will have a little bit of digestion of hemicellulose, but really the majority of fiber your your intestinal bacteria prefers is going to be the soluble fiber. Insoluble fiber has really a different function because it does not dissolve and expand in water. What it actually does is it creates bulking for your intestines, your intestinal discharge. And as they work through your intestinal tract, they actually exfoliate. Yeah, they exfoliate the lining of your intestines, scraping away any dead old cells, dead matter. So think of things that are rich in things that can cleanse and scrape the entire inside of your intestinal tract. Your pomegranate seeds, blackberry seeds, sunflower seeds with their shells, whole flax seeds. These are all really great examples of things that can scrape out, clean out the dead cells from inside our intestinal tract. Folks, as much as we want fresh, new, young cells on our face to make us look younger and fresher and rosier, we want the same for our intestinal tract. We want it to be fresh and young because then it's more successful in absorbing the nutrition from our foods. Hey, something to consider. How do you identify other types of foods that are insoluble? They don't expand. Well, think of like when you cook tomatoes. The skin will roll up inside of a tomato sauce. It doesn't break down. Or the hulls on little corn seeds, that when you eat those, if you eat a whole bunch of them and don't fully chew, what goes in will come out. All right. Fiber. How much fiber do we need in our diet? Well, kind of a general rule of thumb is 25 grams a day for women and 38 grams a day for men. That's based off of a 2,000 calorie diet. If your caloric intake is lower than 2,000 calories, then your dietary fiber will actually reduce commensurate with the reduction in calories. If you have a higher caloric intake, 3,000, 4,000 calories a day, then your dietary fiber would need to increase. What foods are rich in dietary fiber? Well, I think, I'm just going to throw a few at you as examples because I think they're pretty darn cool. All right. I really like Brussels sprouts. Like really good Brussels sprouts can really rock my world. Well, they're 4 grams of carbohydrate fiber, right? Because it's a complex carbohydrate for every cup. 4 grams per cup. If you were to choose, for example, lentils, they're 15.6 grams per cup. Whoa, that's a lot. Or if you think of something like whole wheat pasta, that's 6.3 grams per cup. The bottom line is, folks, is the more whole foods we choose, the greater opportunity we're going to access fiber in our diet. And it's really not that hard. If we eat a diet rich in plant-based foods, we are going to very easily access our fiber. So again, why do we want fiber? Because fiber maintains intestinal health of our bacteria. It keeps things moving. It promotes satiety. It supports us in helping regulate our blood sugar. fiber is something that I can personally say rocks your world. Now, is there the possibility of consuming too much fiber? Yes. Rule number one is when we practice a variety of foods in our diet, then we're less likely to overconsume fiber. That we absolutely in life do want to balance our whole foods with our pleasurable foods. And do you know what I'm talking about? Pleasurable foods, folks? Those are the emotional foods, the things like ice cream. Ice cream's not going to make you smarter, stronger, healthier, but ice cream is a pleasurable food. Does it have fiber? No. Get what I'm saying? When we consume a variety of different foods, we actually get a variety of nutrients also. So in being respectful to fibers, we're actually being respectful for nutrition for our health in general. But if we overconsume any particular type of food in our diet, then we are increasing the likelihood, as long as it's a whole food rich in fiber, we are increasing the likelihood of over-consuming fiber. And when this happens, we consume far more than our body needs. Then it'll perform something called chelation. It will attract and attach to our minerals and then carry them out of our bodies. And that, folks, can, over time, repeatedly promote a nutrient deficiency. So even for things that are super healthy and a part of our wellness, like fiber, we need to practice balance to not go too crazy one way or the other. This page, folks, is just an opportunity for you to take a look at a vast variety of whole foods and how much fiber is in each of those. Again, to remind you, fiber is a complex carbohydrate based only in plants, all right? Not dairy, plants. All right, now let's talk a moment about our intestinal bacteria, the ones who live in our intestinal tract and love to feed off of our whole foods, like the whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. Now, there are about 35 trillion cells in the human body. Yeah, 35 trillion. That's a pretty darn big number. Of that 35 trillion, about maybe 50 billion of them are fat cells, give or take, depending on the person. That would be based off of the average body, a normal BMI. There are about 2 billion heart cells, muscle cells. Okay, cool. That's great. But when we talk about intestinal bacteria, folks, look at all those zeros. We're talking about 100 trillion. 100 trillion. It's profound how many little bacteria and colonies live in our intestinal tract. And they, folks, are part of our health and well-being. They're divided up from our intestines all the way down to our colon. We have a little bit more in our colon at the end of the road than we do at the beginning of the road, but we equally have a lot, all right? I mean, you can't beat that. Your intestinal bacteria is so incredibly powerful that you want to think of it as like the movie Horton Hears a Who, or from the book of Dr. Seuss, is that there are so many of these tiny little things that we can't even see living inside of us. We sometimes really have to ponder, who's really directing us? I mean, when we're eating foods that are feeding them, we're keeping them happy. And when we're keeping them happy, they perform roles to support us in our health. So, is there the possibility that maybe we're like a giant spaceship carrying these 100 trillion bacteria around? I don't know. Bear with me on that thought for a moment, okay? Kind of put that on the back burner for a moment. Now, our world is full of bacteria. That's absolutely normal and perfectly fine. And the vast majority of bacteria is harmless. Some bacteria is powerful and helpful, and some belongs outside our body and some belongs inside our body. For example, Staphylococcus aureus is a bacteria that coats the outside of our body, in our hair, on our skin, and that protects us. It's like armor protecting us against other bacteria, invading bacteria. We have great bacteria living in our intestinal tract: bifidobacteria, lactobacilli bacteria, and E. coli. Now, here's the interesting thing with E. coli. The bifido or bifido or the lactobacilli, those guys come often from originating from dairy products. All right, but the E. coli lives towards the end of our intestinal tract down by our colon. It has a very powerful role of breaking down foods, but the problem is E. coli belongs in our colon and nowhere else. If we come in contact with E. coli through our mouth at the top of the trip, that actually can invade and overgrow in our stomach and our early intestinal tract, folks, and that can make us severely sick. If it gets into our blood, it can promote actually organ failure. So that's where a good bacteria, folks, in the wrong context can go really bad. All right, bacteria that is actually dangerous for us, can make us very sick, is Campylobacter, Enterococcus faecalis, and Clostridium difficile. These three bacteria are examples of ones that we do not want in our body. So this is the beauty, is if we keep that 100 trillion bacterial cells alive and happy, colonizing like little people in condominiums lining up and down our intestinal tract, then they will keep the Campylobacter, the Enterococcus faecalis, and the Clostridium difficile at bay. It will keep them under control if they do access our intestinal tract, because they'll leave nowhere for them to take up residence. All right, what is the purpose? What is the whole point of having these intestinal bacteria? I mean, why do we want colonies growing inside of us? Because they are the ones who support us, that when we eat lactose in our diet, they help digest it. So if you're saying, hey, I'm not lactose intolerant, I don't have a problem, well, good on you. Excellent. I like that. Cool. But here's the thing. They work with you. If you have the lactase enzyme to break down lactose, excellent. But they work with you as a team. If you do not produce lactase anymore and you're lactose intolerant, these are the guys that will feed off of it and produce things like the bloating and the gas. And I'm sorry that happens. Okay, I mean, I know it's kind of a bummer. They're having that party on your lactose. But the reality is what they are doing is saving us, ensuring that we have access to glucose to feed our brain and central nervous system. They are there to ensure that we survive. And that is absolutely extraordinary and synergistic. We are working together, unbeknownst to us. All right, your good bacteria is really awesome also because they produce vitamins when they're feeding off of our dietary foods. They will digest and break those foods down. And when they do, they will produce small amounts of vitamin K necessary for things like blood clotting or your bone proteins. They will produce biotin, important for things like hair health, nails. They'll produce folic acid, vital in the creation of new cells in the human body and in the expression of our DNA. And a little bit of B12, also vital in the creation of new cells and ensuring healthy central nervous system. Your intestinal bacteria will help break down the undigested foods, all that cellulose, hemicellulose, your complex carbohydrates, the whole grain part of the grains. They're going to break it down and extract energy and nutrients so that you are able to utilize them. They're going to work on them slowly so that your system is not inundated with nutrients, but able to gradually cherry pick to support human health. When they break down some of that complex carbohydrate fiber, they will also produce short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids, folks, are a type of fat that is converted to energy reasonably quickly. Now, nothing is converted to energy as quickly as glucose, okay? But short-chain fatty acids can break down in a reasonable amount of time with a much easier digestive process, starting in your bloodstream, not your intestinal tract necessarily. So that's kind of cool. We'll talk more about those when we get to the lipid section. Lastly, your good bacteria, as they break down the foods, the bonds between all of those glucose, they are the byproduct of their gas is that they are also lowering your intestinal pH. And as the acidity level goes up in your intestinal tract, it makes the intestinal real estate far less attractive for invading bacteria to move in. That's pretty darn awesome. So when we have a healthy gut, folks, we have a body that is in balance, healthy, strong, maintaining blood sugar, maintaining weight, and receiving nutrients at a graduated pace. When we disrupt our microbiota, our intestinal bacteria, by not feeding them the foods that they thrive off of, which is what? That would be your carbohydrates. Not protein, not fat, but your carbohydrates, your plant-based foods, and your dairy. When we have a diet rich in these, it supports the intestinal bacteria and keeps them live, healthy, and diverse. But when we're eating a lot of processed foods, folks, that lack fiber, that are dead, that lack the lactose, then that creates a dysbiosis, a breakdown, an unhealthy intestinal tract. And that, folks, we believe is tied to metabolic disorders. What do I mean by metabolic disorders? Obesity, diabetes, blood cholesterol, high blood pressure. Now, why are we saying this? Because as they've started doing research, something interesting has come up. Italy was doing a lot of studies looking at the feces of humans and comparing the bacteria in people who are of a healthy, normal body weight versus people who are carrying excess body weight. And what they found is that people who are at a healthier body weight, no chronic diseases, no metabolic disorders at all, they have an incredible variety, diversity of healthy bacteria in their intestinal tract. But when people were at a heavier weight with a variety of metabolic disorders and very poor dietary choices, they were lacking the diversity of healthy bacteria. So maybe it's a cart and horse conversation that we're not sure which comes first. Is it maybe that our dietary choices ensure we have healthy bacteria? Or another question we're raising is the possibility that does our bacteria influence our dietary choices? Or is it both? I don't know. This is where science is at right now, is delving into the human body and looking at some of its most minute little activities. And one of those being, like Horton Hears a Who, your intestinal bacteria. All right, if you notice at the bottom of the page, now of course this will be in your, it'll be clickable in your regular lecture slides, but I have an awesome little TED Talk here about your microbiota, your intestinal bacteria, and how it influences your brain. It's really awesome. I totally recommend it. It'll help understand this conversation even better. All right, so how do we access these living microbes? Can we promote them in our intestinal tract? Can we add to them? Like, what if you take a course of antibiotics and it wipes out your intestinal bacteria? Don't you want to replace them? Well, there's a few foods that are actually two things. One, prebiotics, meaning they're providing nutrition for our bacteria. And two, are actually rich in those bacteria. They are living in those foods because they are what? Feeding off of them. Your bacteria, this is why I was mentioning earlier in the lactose intolerance section, is that when you're choosing dairy products like yogurt or kefir that are rich in billions of bacteria, then when you eat them, you actually have the potential of accessing some of that bacteria. Now, mind you, the stomach has a very, very intense pH level, which kills off most things. But if you're consuming enough yogurt or kefir at a time, it will most likely have an opportunity to pass through your digestive tract to your intestines and then aid in the existing intestinal bacteria to help them flourish, to help recolonize, especially after having antibiotics. Do they contribute to your existing bacteria even if you didn't take any medication? Yes, there is a possibility. They've tried some studies using capsules and they didn't seem to see a difference. These were studies coming out of Israel. But folks, I'll tell you one interesting thing about your probiotic rich foods is they have been around for thousands of years. All right, your kefir with nomads, natto in Japan, kimchi in Korea, sauerkraut with the Germans. There is something magical about these foods, and that magic, folks, is bacteria. Okay, I have another cool little link here for YouTube. Let's see, I don't believe, nope, this is a different one also for you to further explore and understand your microbiota. And by the way, the vast majority of these links that I offer for you guys are typically going to be short. Once in a while, you might get a longer one, but if it's long, it means it's darn good. And I really liked it. All right, the foods, the prebiotic foods that we can eat in our diet to help promote healthy bacteria, which has the potential of promoting a healthy body, a stronger, what? Oh yeah, immune response system because there's more homeostasis, balance in our bodies. Well, choosing foods like a diet rich in cabbage, dandelion greens, soybeans, folks, yeah, like your edamame, and garlic. Garlic. My two favorites, soybeans and garlic. Of chicory root, actually we don't typically consume that. Jerusalem artichokes, otherwise known as sunchokes, is a possibility. A little more expensive, a little harder to come across. But yogurt, folks, as long as it has live active cultures, it's got to say, not pasteurized, but live active cultures on the side of the package, then you are accessing some darn awesome bacteria that way. Kefir, which is 99.9% lactose free, that's the drinkable yogurts. They typically have a much greater variety of bacteria in them, all of which are wonderfully supportive of human health in the intestinal tract. So what is the future? What are we looking at? There's been a lot of interest about intestinal bacteria and the possibility that it can really create change for human health. And what we're talking about is the possibility that if our intestinal bacteria influences our dietary choices, then maybe, and they've already done studies on this, maybe they should start taking fecal implants to aid people in improving their health and dietary choices. Hey, you know what? You got to do what works. In treatment recovery centers, when we're speaking regarding people with drug and alcohol addiction who are attempting to recover, they oftentimes have severely dysfunctional dietary choices, and these alter the functionality and hormonal balance inside the human body. When we feed them diets rich in whole foods with fiber, this actually will help promote their recovery and supporting them, increasing the delivery of nutrients to repair and heal the body. Autism, there is some research looking into the possibility of different types of gut bacteria may influence the behavior of a person with autism. Now, that one I think might be a little far-fetched, but the first two, those are looking really, really good so far. Intervening factors to take into consideration that can influence our gut bacteria is just a reminder, please, folks, is the more processed food we eat, the less food we are providing for our intestinal bacteria. So that In-N-Out burger and fries, that's not going to feed your intestinal bacteria. I'm sorry to tell you that food is basically dead, okay? But if you choose a lovely salad with a variety of vegetables on it and some fish, or oh, even better, some tofu, then you're providing your intestinal bacteria a heck of a lot of food for them to feed off of also. And just as a reminder that every time we take antibiotics, they do interfere with the integrity of our bacterial colonies. Antibiotics are designed to kill bacteria, and sometimes they can target specific bacteria, and other times they just randomly kill all bacteria, both good and harmful. All right, I have a variety of additional resources for you to support you in understanding more information about your microbiota and the importance of fiber. Folks, the other links I gave you, the videos, I strongly encourage you watch to help flesh out this conversation. But these links here are just additional ones to support you if you're like, I need to understand this better. All right, this was the last lecture for the carbohydrate section. You are now done with carbohydrates, and what would move on from here after taking the quiz is to begin the protein section.